Without further ado, I will introduce our first candidate, Bobby Tugbiyele, who is a candidate for City Council at Large.
Thank you very much, Sue. And thank you to DEI Lowell. Thank you to the consortium for hosting this candidate spotlight, which will be a good thing. I think it's certainly a good community service now and in the future as we want to know where candidates stand on these issues, not just in the short term, but in the long term. So I am honored to be the first candidate running to introduce myself. And so I'll go into my introduction. There's so many folks that I see here tonight that I know and some that I don't know. So it's a little bit familiar, but it's great to be on the other side of it now as a candidate. And so with that said, my name is Bobby Tugbiyele, and I'm running for one of the 3 at-large seats on City Council this year. And I'm running because I want Lowell to be more welcoming. I want it to be more prosperous, and I want it to be a unified city. I've called Lowell home for the majority of my life. I actually turned 40 last week. And what many people may not know is 20 years of my life, or most of 20 years of my life, were spent in New York. And the other 20 years were spent in Lowell. And so this year doesn't just mark my 40th year on this earth, but it also represents half of my life in Lowell, which is very special to me. It's very special to my family. I met my then girlfriend, now wife, in Lowell through UMass Lowell. So we're both UMass Lowell alum. And I'm a first generation American. Both of my parents were born in Nigeria. And I came to Massachusetts in 1999 to study medicine, and ultimately transferred to UMass Lowell after a year at Tufts University, and graduated in 2004 in political science and history. And I think ever since then, I've known that Lowell is going to be the place that I put down roots, both personally, professionally, and obviously now civically. Over the years, I've been told that I've been an approachable person, proactive, curious, innovative, and I've tried to use a lot of those skills, a lot of those experiences over the last 20 years to solve problems and to support members of our community in our city. And I've dedicated my time and talent to Lowell. I have worked in organizations such as Community Teamwork. I've worked at Lowell Community Health Center, all in workforce development, human resources, recruiting functions. My background is in human resources and talent acquisition and recruiting, so I feel especially excited to be a candidate with this particular skill set running in these times for City Council. I do believe wholeheartedly that as we're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, we need individuals with that background who understand not just diversity, but understand the work that it takes to get there. Diversity is the end goal. It's the end goal, but there's a lot of steps before that. And I've always been someone who doesn't just try to talk the talk around this work, but try to walk the walk. And so I'm excited to continue this in a more formal way on City Council. I'm also a business owner. I started a healthcare recruiting firm called the LEAP Network after being a recruiting manager at Lowell Community Health Center in 2017. And that recruiting firm is focused on recruiting diverse and underrepresented healthcare providers. And for me, it's a very personal pursuit, but it's also something that I think is very well timely and needed in the healthcare space today. And so I have 2 sons who are 8 and 7. I remember before I announced, I spoke to many people, hundreds of folks, and a good few folks said, you should wait until your kids are in high school or about to go off to college to run. And no, I said that now is the time for change. Now is the time for younger people to see people who look like me, both professionally and personally and culturally. They need to see that, because representation is representation matters, and it matters in all things. So I'm proud to carry on that for my sons and for my family and also for my community. The time is now to build a better Lowell for our children, for all of our children. Um, and, you know, this is a big year. I mean, we're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and we are moving into a hybrid system. Um, Boston has had this system for 40 years. They changed into a hybrid system in 1981, the year that I was born. And so this is going to be Lowell's first year in this model. It's going to be, it's an experiment. Um, I think on one end, we definitely want more communities of color stepping up. And that will happen over time. I think the fact that we have a lot of more neighborhood representation than we've ever had before is a huge step in the right direction. And in the many conversations that I've had with voters and non-voters, a lot of what I've heard is, I just don't see myself represented in government. I don't see my issues represented in government. I don't see my neighborhood represented in government. And so now is the time for candidates who represent all of those different facets to run and to let their voice be heard and to let their lived experiences be understood, because it's only through those lived experiences, as well as professional experiences and cultural experiences and regional experiences, that we make better policy. And local government is all about providing core services, and those core services mean different things to different people. And so we have to make sure that we're intentional about how we're approaching all folks. And so I'm excited to run, and I thank you for inviting me tonight and getting to know a little bit more about me as a candidate, not as Bobby, but as a candidate, Bobby. And I'll stop there.
Thank you so much. So before we move on to questions, we would like to spend just a few minutes talking about the Racism is a Public Health Crisis letter. For those of you who don't know, I'm just going to review it very quickly. The letter written by the DEI Consortium-Lowell, signed by over 1,500 individuals and community organizations in 2020, sent to the city. You can see the full text at bit.ly/racism is a health crisis. Essentially calls on the city to take action to dismantle systemic racism on a number of fronts. And I'm not going to revisit the whole thing, but it really outlines 5 steps that I think, that are not by any means radical, right? I mean, this is really step 1, articulate the city's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion publicly, establish protocols for data equity and integrity, sort of clear, transparent data, mandate regular anti-racism and anti-bias training for all employees, establish an independent civilian advisory council to work with the police, and to establish an Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. What we would like to do is ask each of the candidates, we'll start with Bobby, to talk about their thoughts on the letter, the city's responses to it. I mean, a lot has happened since then. Some things, there's been some progress, some mixed. So I will turn it over to Bobby.
Sure. So full disclosure, full transparency. Before I was a candidate, I was a citizen. Oh, well, always a citizen, always a citizen. But I was definitely one of the several individuals involved in the crafting of that letter and the advocacy around that letter. So this letter means a lot to me. This letter, to me, in my opinion, was and still is the roadmap for the city, for our community to follow, for a number of reasons. One, you can't work on a problem unless you state what the problem is. And so being part of those initial conversations around racism being a public health crisis, because it is, we didn't just want to jump into doing the work and talk about the prescriptions and talk about the tasks. We have to stand with communities that have been dealing with racism forever. And so by stating the issue, that's step one. And so, and then obviously there were other steps and other proposals that you just spoke about, Sue. And some of those steps and some of those proposals that were outlined initially by the consortium, we're starting to see some movement on the city's end a year later. And so progress and change takes time. Rome was not built in a day. And while I think there are many of us who think the city should be farther along, including myself, I think that candidates and counselors such as myself can accelerate that. We can, because at the end of the day, you either stand on these issues and want to roll up your sleeves and make it happen, or you don't. To me, there's no middle ground. And so in terms of the letter, again, I fully support the letter. I never saw the letter as a Lowell is a racist city. I never saw the letter as an anti-police statement. I saw the letter as a reflection of those that it impacted. This was not about any one city councilor. This was not about any one entity. This was about the lives of people in this city who are taxpayers, who are students, who are homeowners, who are renters, who have been here for a year, have been here for 10 years, have been here for 70 years. This is all about that. And so we need counselors who are sensitive to that. We need counselors who also have those lived experiences, because you can legislate a lot more empathetically. And furthermore, I think we still have a lot more work to do. And so I think with this letter, with a lot more examples of like the HR audit that's recently been done in the city side, and the HR audit that was done in 2018 on the school side, I was very much involved in all of those advocacy efforts. And so I'm proud to have been part of that from the beginning. And I look forward to carrying those proposals through, and also building upon that as well, whether I'm on council or not on council. You know, this is not a temporary pursuit. This is a lifelong journey, and I'm happy to be part of that.
Great. Thank you so much, Bobby. So let's turn to some questions from our participants. The first question from Kristen Stern. Thanks for speaking about your background and experiences, Bobby. Could you speak about some specific plans you'd like to see happen in Lowell? How specifically do you think you can support small businesses and inclusion issues from the City Council? Thanks.
So I'm very excited to have this conversation, and it almost feels like, oh man, if I spill the beans on my ideas, is it gonna end up in a City Council motion? So Kirsten, thank you so much for your question. I think specificity is so important. What I will share is there's a lot that can be done on the civic end of the world around equity. I mean, the reality is that we do not have a strong, robust, engaged citizenry. We don't. If we look at the numbers over the last decade, the only year that had the highest turnout in terms of voters, I believe we neared 17 or 18%, and then it plateaued the following year in 2019 to 15 or 16%. Was the year we debated the high school in 2017. But on average, over the last decade, we've averaged roughly about 17, 18% voter turnout. And so specifically, and I said this on my kickoff back in June, that I want to be part of a council that moves the needle and sets policies and procedures and accountability systems that increases voter turnout for 2023 to 25%. I think we want to set realistic goals. I think we want to be transparent and open with the public and say we need to do better in terms of voter turnout. And not just say it that we want more people to turn out to vote, but we do something about it. And there's a lot that can be done. I think moving into a more hybrid system is a step in that direction, but I also think that there are other things that can be done within the neighborhoods to engage more people, meeting people where they're at. And part of why I'm running is to form a stronger relationship between the people and their local government. I think there's a perception from many people in the community for many years that you have to go to them. Well, I think that it's time for local government to come to the people. And that's totally indicative of the fact that we went through a lawsuit. People did not feel heard. People did not feel represented. And this lawsuit is part of a history in our city. There was a lawsuit a generation ago in the school systems affecting our Cambodian and our Hispanic members in terms of lack of equitable treatment experiences, busing, et cetera. And so there's a history here, whether it's in 2021 or in the 90s or in the 70s. So we need a council that is going to acknowledge these historical issues and is bold, is honest, but puts policies in place to remedy and bridge Lowell forward. And that's what I'm about. Some other specificity, Kirsten, because you talked about businesses, and I am a small business owner. I have put forth some proposals as part of the city's receipt of $75 million in the American Rescue Plan. And I would highly encourage folks to go on my website, bobbyforlowell.com. Excuse me. Yep, you can go on my website, but the specific link, and I'll put it in the chat, is go.bobbyforlowell.com/ARPA. And in that link, you will find proposals that also address areas of opportunities for small businesses. I think we need to invest in an economic development specialist. And some folks will say, look, you're adding to the budget another administrator. So in terms of small businesses, I propose that we do invest in economic development by making sure we have another specialist that's talking to community members, talking to business owners. And as I've gone door to door, but just not talking to residents, but also talking to small businesses, many small business owners do not feel that they have a strong relationship with the city. Many small businesses feel that their relationship with the city is lacking. And a lot of that stems from lack of communication. A lot of that stems from lack of systems in place to ensure that businesses have the information required to not just survive, but thrive. But also a lot of businesses are starting to wonder whether Lowell's for them. And so I think we need to continue investing in the areas that are going to bridge Lowell forward, short-term and long-term. And so for me specifically, I want to make more investments in economic development. Lowell is now is the 5th largest municipality in the Commonwealth. And what they say, you got to spend money to make money. You can't nickel and dime your way into success. You can't. And so there are going to have to be some areas that we invest in. And I see investing in economic development as critical. For all of our businesses, but especially our BIPOC businesses too. Lowell is a city of immigrants. It is. And without our Asian business owners, our African business owners, our Portuguese business owners, you name it, you name it. Without them, Lowell's done. I can't say it any other way. And so we need to make sure that we are standing with all business owners, but also standing with those that are the bedrock of this community. And we need to make sure that they're listened to and that they have the resources to be successful. I think we have a lot of programs in the city, from entrepreneurial incubators based at UMass Lowell, based at Middlesex Community College, based in E4All, that we can partner. The city doesn't have to do everything, but we can partner with programs that are currently doing that work and be a stronger collaborator. And we use that word a lot, partnership and collaboration. And so I would be a counselor that would, be lockstep with a lot of these programs to make sure that they feel supported, and that we are also recruiting from that pipeline to encourage entrepreneurs to stay in Lowell, because if they stay in Lowell, those tides are going to rise. So Kirsten, I hope I answered your question.
Thank you, Bobby. So the next question is from Yunju Choi. What do you think about DPD's housing report with 20 suggested zoning changes? Do you have any particular suggestions you support or disagree with?
Yeah, so it's a robust report. That's number one. Number two, I am an advocate and I support ensuring that we have housing for people in Lowell that need it. And we need to increase our supply of housing. We need to make sure that our housing supply is diverse in terms of income, in terms of size. We know the data. I mean, I was at an economic development roundtable where the governor had come and the lieutenant governor had come over the last 3 to 4 months. Governor Baker had visited Pinella, and Lieutenant Governor Polito had visited Olympia restaurant. And part of that discussion was around the future of Lowell. And housing is the number one thing on that conversation. So it needs to be part of all of our lexicon. It has to be part of all of our strategy, short-term and long-term. And the governor, from the governor to the lieutenant governor to anyone who's in this business, to CBA, to CTI, to our housing mavens, we all know what the issues are. We all know over the last generation, we've focused more on single family housing in the whole Northeast. This is not just a Lowell issue. This is a regional issue. And so over years of policies that has not focused more on multi-families and multi-generational wealth that comes with that as well. And so I will say, Yunju, that I will be a proponent of making sure that we have housing across the board for middle income earners, for those who are housing insecure. And I applaud CBA for the work that it's doing in terms of I think it's 555 Merrimack and what you're doing with the old Lowell House location and making that into a sober, I don't want to misspeak, Yunju, but I believe the majority of the units in that project will be specifically for individuals who are going through recovery. And so what we need to understand around housing and homelessness is that it doesn't look like one person. Homelessness isn't just someone living on the street. There are people who are couch surfing today. There are people who are PhDs, bachelors, and they lost their job due to this pandemic and living paycheck to paycheck. And they're visiting mass hire for the first time for job assistance, and they're homeless. And so we got to look at the spectrum of homelessness. We have to be sensitive to the current state of affairs. Some people may say, well, Lowell has done its fair share and we need to look at the neighboring communities. Yeah, let's do that too. But guess what? People are here and they're not going anywhere. And they're also coming here for a reason. They're coming to Lowell for a reason. And so we need to look at it and look at the opportunities. We shouldn't demonize people that are here. But again, this just cannot be solved at the municipal level. We need state involvement, we need federal involvement, but we also need a city council that has a vision. what is our vision? What is our value proposition? And we have to be in lockstep. And I'm excited to be part of a council that has a vision around the future of housing. Every neighborhood is different. Pawtuckaville is not downtown. Downtown is not the Acre. Centerville is not back central. Some places are more densely populated than others. This is true. And so we have to have difficult conversations around population growth. We have to have difficult conversations around economic development. And we have to have different conversations about the future of Lowell. We just have to. And it's not going to be a comfortable conversation for many people, but it needs to be had. And so, long story short, I'm excited to be part of a council that will be visionary, that will not run away from difficult conversations, but will also try to form as many strong partnerships and collaborations around these issues going forward.
Great. Thank you so much, Bobby. So we're at 7:30. I know that you have to go, but do you want to say just 30 seconds worth of response to the next question from John Grossman? Just, climate change is bringing us more powerful storms, extreme heat, and many other problems. What should Lowell be doing to prepare for the impact of climate change?
Right. So I'll firstly say that climate change is real. So I think that just needs to be said. It's a real thing. And so one of the things that I've been looking into and observing is, PFAS in our water, and our water integrity and environmentalism. All of these things need to be looked at. I think one of the things so I'll put it this way, John. I think I need to continue learning about opportunities that can be done on a local level. You do have a supporter in me in making sure that Lowell is a safe place to live in, and that we're investing in those areas. This is a very complex issue. This cannot be solved and talked about in 2 minutes. And I want to also make sure we give this conversation some due diligence as well. And I'm not going to, this is being recorded, so I want to make sure I want to be respectful of this issue, but know that I'm paying attention to climate change. It's something that we have to also continue keeping our foot on the gas pedal on a local level, and I will be supporting those measures too.
Great. Thank you so much. Let's give Bobby Tugbiyele a round of virtual applause. Thank you so much.
So there's another question that came in from 2 more minutes, just to Corey Robinson. What areas of the city would you like to see more multifamilies?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good
30
question.
seconds.
Yeah, 30 seconds. Well, since you're from Centerville, I would say that actually, if we can have Corey, do you mind just ask if you can speak up just around that particular question, like what's the thought behind that question?
So, for example, Centerville, Acre, Lower Highlands, very densely populated.
That's right. Yeah.
Ton of multifamilies already.
Yeah.
And so we're running out of space for large developments for additional housing in that format.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, what other areas would you look to expand some of that?
Understood. Look, this is the same conversation we're having in places like Pawtuckaville or Upper Highlands or different neighborhoods where it's not as densely populated. But when we have conversations with individuals who may live in those communities, they may not necessarily want their neighborhoods or the character of their neighborhoods changed. They like the way they're living. And Corey, when I mentioned having difficult conversations, this is part of it. Population is increasing, and we have to do something about it. And so communities that may not be used to or may not want or may not be comfortable with additional housing, whether it's townhouses or multifamilies, et cetera, we're going to have those conversations. But the other thing we're going to need to have, Corey and others, are what existing vacant buildings can be redeveloped across the city. Some of them exist in the acres, some of them exist in Centerville across the board that can be turned into residential, that can be turned into commercial, that could be turned into mixed use. So I think that there's a lot of opportunities to look at housing and availability of housing and housing stock across the board. There have been neighborhoods that have faced the brunt of population growth and compared to others. So I'm looking forward to continue having those conversations and partnering with neighborhood counselors to ensure that they feel that there's equity in the housing. And these conversations are going to be ongoing. This didn't start today, it won't end today. But Corey, I really do appreciate that conversation because we've talked about this before and this is going to be ongoing.
Great. Thank you so much, Bobby. So thank you.
If there's one more thing I apologize. I do think there's one thing that needs to be said around our relationship with the police department. We talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And one thing I will say is we got to make sure that we're building stronger relationships with the police. I think that we need to make sure that that relationship exists from the top all the way to the bottom. And I'm looking forward to working with other counselors, especially in the neighborhoods, to make sure that community policing, but also the police force continues to look more like the community that it represents.
And to both of our candidates today, Bobby Tugbiyele for City Council at Large and Stacey Thompson for School Committee District 1. Thank you so much. Next week, we will have candidate spotlight on Corey Robinson and Justin Ford. Keep on the lookout. If you would like to follow DEI Consortium-Lowell on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, if you'd like to contact us, just go get on our mailing list. You can email dei.lowell.ma@gmail.com. Everyone, stay safe, wear your masks inside, and be kind to one another, and have a great night. Thank you, everyone.